and support in Indian Wells. Look at this. I mean, this was in Australia. Court 6 literally had a line. I know I'm exaggerating, but it went for miles at the Aussie. It was wild scenes there. Allie, can you remember a women's star who gets this type of support wherever she goes?
Yeah, well, Taylor Swift. I mean,
Here's the polished rewrite. This 21-year-old from the Philippines is pulling off something that ranked champions and Grand Slam winners seemingly cannot match. She is packing arenas, crashing websites, creating genuine logistical headaches for event organizers trying to manage crowds that nobody planned for. And the people inside the industry, the ones who have seen every era of this sport up close, are now openly asking a question that would have seemed premature just 12 months ago. Has Alex Eala become the most magnetic personality in women's tennis? Not the most skilled, not the highest ranked. Those are separate conversations entirely, and important ones. But magnetic, the ability to make people stop what they are doing, buy a plane ticket, stand in a line that wraps around a stadium, and hold their breath on every single point, that is something different. That is something rarer. And right now, the evidence suggests she has it in a way that no one else on the tour currently does. So we are putting the question directly to you. Ranking aside, results aside. Has Eala already claimed the title of the most compelling figure in women's tennis today? And what is it specifically that draws you in? The tennis, the story, the atmosphere she generates simply by walking onto a court. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. There is no wrong answer here, and genuinely, I want to hear every perspective on this. Sonnet 4.
no, I'd have to say maybe a little bit of Sonia Mirza. Back in her heyday, obviously the Indian fans took to her and they followed her all around the globe, obviously not to this extent. And I think the ceiling that Alex Eala has is obviously that much higher. And I'm going to bring in a little boxing here because my dad wanted me to be a boxer, but I chose tennis. But Manny Pacquiao.
Good call.
Manny Pacquiao, we saw him when he, was at the top of his game. And alongside Roger Federer, he actually had more prize money. So I think that if Eala, can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? The sky's the limit on the court, off the court. I mean, she could be rolling it.
Here's the polished rewrite. Let's talk about a statistic that frankly shouldn't exist. At the 2026 Australian Open, Alex Eala's pre-tournament media session racked up 171,000 views. Novak Djokovic, the most decorated men's player in the history of the sport, managed 80,000. Aryna Sabalenka, the reigning world #1 in women's tennis, a multiple Grand Slam champion who dismantles opponents with a brand of raw, suffocating power that makes her competition look completely outmatched, pulled in 9,000. Take a moment to actually process that. The current world #1 attracted 9,000 views to her press conference. Eala pulled nearly 20 times that number. Not in a tournament final. Not in a highlight reel. In a pre-tournament media session. The part of the week that even the most devoted tennis fans typically scroll past. And here is what makes this truly remarkable. Nobody is attempting to explain it away anymore. Tennis insiders aren't reaching for context or caveats. They are looking at these numbers, looking at the crowds, looking at the atmosphere she generates everywhere she goes. And acknowledging plainly that what is happening around Alex Eala is something the sport has not seen in a very long time. Possibly ever.
She's got a smile that lights up a room too, and I remember last year when she beat Iga Swiatek and she kind of did it with a lot of grace and humility, and it was really, for me, it was terrific to see her take that match and watch her play after that and watch her try to continue to progress, because I like her game. Obviously, she wants to get better than where she is now, the 32 in the world, but she's got a lot of good hand-eye coordination and ability to take the ball early and redirect. But the fan stuff is always fun for me, because whenever you see players from smaller countries, the fans are so passionate when they get up to the top.
It's interesting, Ali mentioned Sonia Mirza. She has nearly 13 million followers on Instagram. That's 5 million more than Carlos Alcaraz, and nearly as many as Alcaraz and Sabalenka combined. So that's how big Sonia Mirza was, and will be. But Eala going to be seeded for the first time at a 1,000 to find out who she will play in the second round. Check out.
Here's a polished rewrite. Here is how tennis experts are talking about Alex Eala in 2026. There is nothing cautious about it. Nothing measured. None of the polite, carefully hedged commentary where every player gets described as talented with potential and everyone goes home satisfied. That conversation is over. Former ATP professionals Sam Querrey and Steve Johnson recently addressed something that many people inside tennis have been thinking privately for months. They asked the question straight out. Has Alex Eala become the biggest attraction in women's tennis right now? Johnson didn't hesitate. Absolutely. She's heading that direction. Absolutely. But that answer requires context because being the biggest attraction means something very specific. It is not about having the highest ranking. It is not about collecting the most titles. It is about who fills seats, who breaks streaming platforms, who makes event organizers lose sleep about crowd management before a single ball has been struck. When you frame the question that way, building a case against Eala in 2026 becomes genuinely difficult. Australia is where this surge began. The atmosphere surrounding her matches at the Australian Open was described by reporters on the ground as absolutely chaotic. Lines stretching beyond anything the venue anticipated. Crowds gathering that made no logical sense based purely on ranking. Here was a player sitting outside the top 30 at the time, generating the kind of pre-match energy that Grand Slam organizers typically associate with top seeds in the second week. The Filipino support was massive, passionate, and coordinated in a way that felt less like traditional tennis spectating and more like fans showing up for a major concert. Passionate national support for players is not new territory in this sport. But the sheer scale of what is happening around Eala is making even the most seasoned commentators struggle to find proper comparisons. When pressed to name which women's star has generated this level of international traveling support, one expert pointed to Sonia Mirza, which is genuinely serious territory. Mirza built a following that crossed borders and outlasted her playing career. Her Instagram currently sits at nearly 13 million followers, roughly 5 million more than Carlos Alcaraz, and almost matching Alcaraz and Sabalenka's combined total. That is not sports popularity. That is cultural impact. And analysts are suggesting Eala's potential in that dimension goes higher. Another name that surfaced in that same conversation. Manny Pacquiao. Let that land for a moment. Pacquiao at his peak was not merely a boxing champion. He was a national institution. His fights became holidays in the Philippines. The entire country reorganized its schedule around him. At his commercial height, he was reportedly earning figures comparable to Roger Federer when combining prize money with endorsements. When tennis analysts start invoking Manny Pacquiao as their closest available comparison, the discussion has clearly left standard territory behind entirely. And these are not enthusiastic fans reaching for hyperbole. These are former professionals and analysts who have spent entire careers trying to maintain objectivity about this sport. So what is actually driving this? The devotion doesn't materialize from nothing. And it is not purely emotional. There is a specific combination of elements working with Eala that is producing something the sport has not quite experienced in this form before. First, her story carries unusual resonance. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy, growing up away from family, developing her game in one of tennis's most demanding competitive environments. She progressed through the junior ranks, captured junior Grand Slam titles, and then faced the challenge that ends most junior careers. The brutal, unforgiving transition to the professional tour, where potential means nothing and results mean everything. Most junior champions quietly fade at this stage. Eala not only survived it, she did so in a way that deeply connected with everyone watching and hoping. When she defeated the world number one, it was the kind of victory that fundamentally shifts how people see a player. Not just because of who she beat, but because of how she responded. Poise. To come. The genuine modesty in a moment that would have tempted anyone to perform for the cameras. That kind of authenticity is not manufactured. And the loyalty it creates cannot be bought. Second, the market she represents is massive and largely untapped. Southeast Asia is one of the fastest-growing sports consumption regions in the world. Digital adoption, social media engagement, and appetite for live sports content across the Philippines and neighboring countries represent a commercial opportunity that global sports organizations have been trying to unlock for years. Eala doesn't just appeal to that market. She embodies it. When a Filipino fan watches her compete, or travels across continents to see her at a Grand Slam, something deeper than sports appreciation is happening. It is cultural representation at the elite level of an individual sport. It is watching someone who shares your background competing on the world's biggest stage. That emotional connection does not depend on rankings. It runs on identity. And in today's sports landscape, identity spreads faster than almost anything else. Third, her tennis is legitimately excellent. This matters enormously because influence without performance has a very short shelf life. Eala possesses real technical ability. Her hand-eye coordination is exceptional. Her capacity to take the ball early and redirect it, shifting the dynamic of a point before her opponent can recover, has been highlighted by coaches as a genuine competitive advantage. It is not just spectacular to watch. It is strategically effective. It creates problems that higher-ranked players have struggled to solve. She began 2026 with strong momentum, made a deep run in Dubai, and climbed 16 ranking positions to reach a career-high world number 31 by late February. She arrives at Indian Wells with a 10-6 season record, numbers that demonstrate consistency, upward momentum, and the ability to win matches at the highest level week after week. This is not a social media phenomenon about someone who is popular online but struggling on the court. Her results and her cultural rise are happening simultaneously, and they are strengthening each other. Now here is where it gets truly fascinating. Tournament directors across the Middle East and Southeast Asia have been openly comparing her audience appeal to Manny Pacquiao. Novak Djokovic, a man who has experienced everything tennis has to offer and is not easily impressed, has described the excitement surrounding her as a positive challenge for the sport. When Djokovic frames your fan base as a positive challenge for tennis, you have moved into an entirely different category of athlete. The operational reality is already visible. Attendance at her matches is surpassing what venues anticipated. Organizers are managing situations they did not plan for because a player ranked outside the top 30 is generating demand that belongs in a far higher tier. The comparison that keeps surfacing, and it deserves to be taken seriously, is Sania Mirza's blueprint. Mirza demonstrated how a player from a non-traditional tennis market could build a following that transcended borders, outlasted her active career, and ultimately elevated an entire region's relationship with the sport. She became a cultural icon who happened to compete at tennis's highest level. Analysts are now saying Eala's potential in that dimension goes higher. Not tentatively, not with caveats, definitively higher. And the current data supports that assessment directly. A press conference drawing 171,000 views against Djokovic's 80,000 is not a coincidence. That is an audience making a very clear statement about who they want to see. There is also the social media reality to consider, because that is where the younger demographic, the audience that will shape sports commerce for the next 2 decades, decides who to follow. Eala belongs to the generation that grew up in this environment. Short-form video, instant engagement, behind-the-scenes access, the kind of platform presence that transforms a sports moment into shareable cultural content. Her victories spread rapidly. Her personality translates brilliantly on screen. She has, as one analyst noted with complete seriousness, a smile that brightens any room. And in the modern attention economy, warmth and charisma are not minor qualities. They determine whether a moment goes viral or gets forgotten entirely. Coco Gauff created the recent template for what a young women's player with genuine mainstream crossover potential looks like. The commercial possibilities, the cultural visibility, the ability to reach audiences who don't ordinarily watch tennis. Multiple analysts monitoring this situation in real time are reporting that Eala is already generating comparable attention in certain markets and exceeding Gauff in direct engagement numbers across Southeast Asia. That is a meaningful observation. The ranking gap between them is substantial. Gauff holds Grand Slam titles and top 10 status. But the viewership explosion around Eala is not behaving like a 31st ranked player. It is behaving like something considerably larger, And tennis leadership is beginning to acknowledge that the traditional equation of rankings equal influence does not fully apply to her situation. So where does this go from here? She is 21 years old. She is climbing the rankings at precisely the moment her cultural presence is accelerating. A player's physical and technical development at 21 still carries enormous growth potential. If the match results keep trending upward, deeper runs, more victories over top 10 opponents, the consistency that moves a ranking from 31 to 15 to 10, the combination of performance and influence would create something women's tennis has not quite witnessed before. Not simply an excellent player with passionate international supporters. An athlete functioning as a cultural force, backed by one of the world's most devoted sporting nations, competing at the absolute highest level of an individual sport with full global broadcast distribution. The potential ceiling, as experts keep emphasizing, reaches very high. And right now, in early 2026, even the foundation alone is impressive enough to make tournament directors adjust their operational planning, and make former champions reach for boxing analogies just to find language adequate enough to describe what they are seeing. Nobody predicted this 2 years ago. Yet it is absolutely the reality the tennis world is examining right now. Alex Eala has evolved beyond a tennis story. She is a viewership phenomenon, a cultural movement, and, as it happens, a crowd control challenge. Which, all things considered, is exactly the kind of challenge you want to have.